Welcome, I'm John Caldera, president of the Independence Institute, talk show host on 850 KOA, and your devil's advocate. Newspapers are dead, haven't you heard? Well, you probably didn't read that in the newspapers, but blogs seem to be taking off and controlling local political news probably more so than the papers. To talk about that from the People's Press Collective, let's start over here. Michael Sandoval, thank you.
Hi, John.
It's probably peoplespresscollective.org or .com, I always forget.
Both, but it's .org as well.
.org, all right. And this is a conglomeration of more conservative/libertarian bloggers.
It's the biggest statewide conservative, libertarian, Republican coalition of bloggers posting at one place.
And it's also a dating service.
Yes.
Got it. And David Theron, I got that one right?
Thielen.
Thielen, I got so close. You work on Colorado polls and your own website as well.
Correct.
All right. Can we start off and talk a little bit about Colorado polls, which I think really started off as the political junkie website here in Colorado. And it was kind of an interesting little site, but people from the left, people from the right kept going to it because it gave us rumors and it kind of gave us news and tidbits. And you also had this little interesting feature that said, who's up, who's down,
The big line.
Tell me about the big line.
All right. Well, first of all, I don't run Colorado polls. I don't know anybody who does. So you're just getting my opinion on that.
How do you? I need to know this. How do you not know who runs the website for whom you publish?
They don't tell you.
Well, who are they?
Well, if they told us, then we'd know.
Why won't they tell you?
That also, you would have to know them to ask them that.
Why do they have why would you work with somebody you don't know?
I don't know anybody at the Denver Post, but I occasionally hit their website.
But have you ever thought that maybe I secretly run Colorado polls?
That's possible, but the opinions expressed officially there are so eloquent and accurate. I would find that hard to...
Very fair point. Just as to contrast, People's Press Collective, is there some leaders, or this is like Occupy Denver on the left here that nobody seems to be in charge?
Well, there's leaders, but everybody's named, and my name was always a sort of El Presidente was a semi-anonymous joke. So everybody knew who I was because I had my name out there pretty much at the same time I started blogging. So it was El Presidente was my handle, but I went by my name. So when we're talking about Colorado polls and the reason why they took off and why any blog takes off is they may have been publishing rumors, but these were credible rumors.
I think that's
and that credibility is really, I think, at the core. You know, when we have the discussion of how blogs are developing.
All right, hang on. Let's take this back a little bit, all right? Because, it's like talking to an old guy, and you guys are involved in swingers clubs, and I'm just trying to understand your lingo here. I mean, it just seems a handle. Now, I thought this was something that Smokey and the Bandit had. This is my handle. So on Colorado polls and People's Press, there are people who write anonymously. Is that?
Well, no, on every blog you have what's called a handle, and everything you publish goes against that handle. Now, your handle can be your name. So your handle could be John Caldera. My handle is David THI, but I've told people repeatedly what my real name is, just like you have apparently with El Presidente. The beauty of that, though, is a Google search in either of our names doesn't come find us.
Ooh, hang on a second. So is the anonymity so that people don't know who you are, or is it just so that people can't Google you?
There's multiple levels. There's people who must be anonymous. Pretty clear from what they say that they're very highly connected up in the state government. And if people knew who they were saying those things, they'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay? There's people who go semi-anonymously, which
like you two.
Yeah, which is anybody who's regularly on either of those sites knows who we are. Anybody who just shows up doesn't. And me, for work, I don't want someone who Googles my name coming across the political stuff. That can cause problems. And then there's people whose handle is their name.
Let's see if I get this. So if you use your real name and you're applying for a job that is a government contractor for the defense industry, and they Google you and find, wait a second, this guy's some freaky peacenik, they might not hire you.
That one doesn't worry me that much, and I own my own company, so it's not that big a problem.
But the idea is the same.
But my worry is you have someone who owns a company who is a rabid Republican supporter and doesn't want anybody working for him who doesn't toe that line.
No, those are happy workplaces.
Sorry.
And the same thing with People's Press. Are most people do it under a handle?
Yeah, we know who everybody is at People's Press Collective.
Do readers know?
Not all the time. I mean, it's the same thing. When I blog under my handle, a lot of people are just like, who is this person?
But
But they would legitimately have the same concern.
Right, but isn't it, you know, you just said that Colorado Polls published credible rumors, which is why a lot of politicos and junkies would go
And
check
they get
on
them
it.
first. That's gigantic.
Right, but if they're going to be credible, why not put your name on it? And it's one of those things reporters have, you know, we're the Denver Post, we're the whatever paper, we have our names, we have our you know, we know that we have these professional standards. You guys
Well,
don't
let's
even
say
use
you're a
your names.
lobbyist, and you happen to pick up first on something inappropriate a legislator did. I would guess that you're not going to be quite as popular a lobbyist if you put that out with your name on it.
So really, this is going back to a 250-year-old argument about free speech when we had pamphleteers who had pen names because they didn't want the Brits to know who they were.
And,
Same sort of thing.
and Hamilton and Jefferson themselves both did that.
And so did Ben Franklin.
And at the same time, you know, last year working for National Review, everything with my name was bylined properly. Everything was credited to me. So now if you do a Google search, Michael Sandoval, National Review will pop up. So it only adds to the credibility now that I've.
And these sites, both of them, one on the left, one on the right, they're more or less aggregators from several different bloggers. These are not 100% you, and People's Press not 100% you, but you have people who are roughly like-minded contributing, correct?
Not on polls. In fact, polls, it's not as nice anymore, but polls used to have a really wide spectrum of intelligent, thoughtful people across the board, from very conservative, very liberal, libertarian, you know, out into cloud cuckoo land on the liberal side. And that, to me, was its big appeal. I didn't care about the fact they got the rumors first because I'm not involved in the state government. But there's not as many conservatives anymore, and polls is much poorer for that. But there still is, where it used to be a wide spectrum like this, it's sort of like this big here and sort of smaller there.
Newspapers have editorial control. So you write something, goes up to the editor says, I'm not right, I'm not publishing this. This is wrong, it's poorly written, and you haven't been sourced well. For PPC, you have something like that, don't you? That your contributors can't just write whatever they want.
Yeah, we had sort of standing rules. You know, limited government, less taxes. You know, personal liberty and freedom. If you're writing about those things, writing about the free markets, it's good to go. We've agreed. We've agreed to leave the social issues off the table. So those are.
What about the fact checking? All right, if I say something that is just completely erroneous and obvious, will you still print it as long as if I'm saying something you like?
We don't day-to-day fact check everything, every single line, because that's just nobody's getting paid to do that. Unlike the Denver Post, there's not.
Trust me, from what I hear, nobody's getting paid there either.
But if somebody is pointing out in the comments that somebody's making that, we will talk to the person who's contributing that and say, hey, from my perspective, everything needs to be fact checked.
What about on the left? The same sort of thing?
On the left, there's a million different blogs.
On polls, let's try on polls.
On polls, there's a couple things.
Because you don't even know who's publishing it.
No, you do, and people.
No, you don't. You said you don't know for whom you work.
Part of this is we're trying to explain something to you in a very short period of time, which is very hard to get your mind around.
Calling me stupid again?
No,
that's what I need.
Not stupid. It's that you don't have knowledge of a specific area of how it goes. There are people whose handles, based on what they say, that I trust their judgment, because they've earned that over time. And if someone comes on, if you come on and you post as John Caldera, you bring whatever pluses and minuses people have from what you've done elsewhere. Yeah.
I mean, I could just start writing, and polls will publish everything I write?
Yes, and here's how it works, is anybody can write a diary, and it goes over on the right in chronological order. Polls and two independent people make the decision of which ones get moved to the main part.
And who are those two independent people?
They're voted on every 6 months, and everybody acts like it's the end of the world as to who gets elected. I was the first one where they just picked it themselves, and then subsequently in the elections, I've always run and been one of the front page editors when we've had a even year election during that 6-month period.
Is polls owned by anybody? Who owns the domain?
There's some LLC that owns it.
And you don't know who owns the LLC? Who owns PPC?
Myself and a couple other people.
All right, so, hey, we got a straight answer. Just like that was incredible.
You got a straight answer here. I don't know.
But you don't know.
I don't care. It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. All right, let's talk a little bit about newspapers and what you guys do, both on the left and the right. I mean, this used to be a great two-paper town. I mean, we got more coverage on local issues than most major cities. That's gone. The size of the papers are dwindling. The Post has only a small amount. Unfortunately, the Post has something called the Spot blog, which I think has been really useful for us addicts who need political, gossipy stuff all the time. But the rise of what you guys are doing, will it replace newspapers in the long run, at least for local political news? Let's bring it over here.
I don't think it's replacing it. I think it's supplementing it. I think both blogs on the left and right are augmenting or finding the stories that are falling through the cracks because we don't have the Rocky Mountain News anymore. They're able to pick those up, do their own independent investigative journalism, making phone calls, asking questions, and publishing credible, intelligent, commentary or original reporting, and kind of picking up the slack. I think where blogs have pulled newspapers, and especially, but all media in general, is to valuing video more. It started 5 years ago. Everybody remembers the macaca video, and since then, video online has been just a huge thing for blogs, but it's also become now part of the mainstay of any of the local stations. Last week they were live streaming from the occupied Denver scene downtown. They're acknowledging that that's where news in general is going. It's going online, and so we're not really replacing it. I don't think you'll ever be able to replace the Capitol Bureau staff of the Denver Post or anything like that. But we are picking up some of that slack and reporting on stuff that was never going to be covered by the Post anyway.
There's less news space in papers. Do you read paper?
No, and I don't read anything on print. I go to the web. I think he's half right that the Post and the newspapers bring a unique thing that's very valuable. I think it's unfortunate that it is no longer a profitable endeavor and they're going to go out of business.
You're certain of that?
What?
You're certain about that?
Oh, yeah. You look at the curve. I make my living in the high-tech industry. I've been on this stuff from the get-go. And you look at the curve of what's happening, and they had a chance once upon a time when they were oblivious to what Craigslist was going on, and that took away about half their revenue stream before they were even aware that such a thing existed. It wasn't just that began the crash into the ground. It's that they don't have people who are from a totally different world coming in. They still have newspaper people trying to save their existing newspaper world, and that world's gone.
And also, they have infrastructure. You guys don't have infrastructure.
Right, and infrastructure costs money.
As long as your moms keep buying you Hot Pockets, right, you don't have to worry. But they've got to buy the ink, they've got to depreciate the building, they've got to have delivery systems.
And what do you gain from having all that? Because it costs, but there's no benefit.
The benefit is you have something tangible, and there's something that old people like about holding a piece of paper.
Yes, they do, but old people die.
No, we don't. We're going to change that. All right. And Denver Post now hasn't quite figured out how to make money on the internet.
Right.
The pop-ups are coming up more and more. And you understand, there's only one paper that I'm aware of that actually makes money on the internet, and that's the Wall Street Journal. But the Wall Street Journal has a very specific audience, and that's, I think, the anomaly. How will you guys become self-sufficient, or will it always just be a hobby / labor of love?
I think it will be partially a hobby and a labor of love, but I think the intention of organizations like National Review, Daily Caller, Big Government, some of these are on the right, to fill some of that gap of political reporting. I think the concern for any local news person covering politics is they don't want to be scoped by the politicos of the world, because everything now, when it's a battleground state and people are interested in what's going on in Colorado, there's going to be multiple people looking at it, and often now you have the digital news services coming in and trying to scoop essentially the AP and the Denver Post and get the stories out there. So when it comes to news coverage, it's not going to go away. It's just going to come from somewhere else. The cat out of the bag for newspapers was offering content for free, and then after the fact, like the New York Times did, trying to put up a wall saying you can't get this content for free. Well, you just find it somewhere else. Somebody else will have published something about that story, so you can always find a free source of that information. So it's hard for them to ever put that, that cat back in the bag, so to speak.
How are you going to stay in business? I mean, this is,
Wait, he does it for free. I do it for free. I have no interest in getting paid for anything I write. I get paid a lot of money in my chosen profession. This is a hobby. I write for fun.
But let me play devil's advocate for just a second. Reporters go to journalism school where they learn certain standards. They have the AP style of reporting. If you're going to have an anonymous source, it needs to be fact-checked by 2 different other sources. Right. You have these type of things so that when we print something, it's meant to be something. It has been blessed by the newspaper as this is a legitimate story. You guys don't have the time to do that. You don't have the resources to do that.
And that system's only existed for about 70 years.
It's true.
Before that, this country did fine without that system.
What happens when you guys get it wrong? I mean, when the Post gets something wrong, on page 2, there's a little tiny paragraph, corrections.
Right.
We really
when I
messed
get
up.
something wrong, I immediately leave what's up there with it marked through, put a correction there, and I put sorry, and I won't say the word up, on it.
But there's no fallout if a blogger, a disreputable blogger, does
No,
something
it's your
wrong.
reputation.
Your reputation's at stake.
Your reputation is the only thing you have. There are people that when they post something on polls, I assume it's wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
Most of them are on the right, of course.
but what I'm hearing here, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing that there's almost a marketplace here, that you build up your reputation and therefore you become a trusted internet source of news.
Correct.
Seems a little free marketing to me.
Well, the standard at National Review was the same standard as newspapers. I had editors, I had fact-checking, but when it comes to personal blogs, no one is going to, the currency, aside from your own personal credibility on the internet, is getting linked, is getting other people saying, David wrote this, it doesn't matter if I agree with him or not, but he's got a perspective, he's got something new to talk about, he's got an interview with a Democratic politician. It's credible, it's a good source, I'm going to link to him. If he gets anything wrong, you're not going to link to them. So people are very cautious about just going out there and just blasting things on rumors and saying, oh, this is this way or this is that way, because they know if they screw up, especially when you're a local blogger, you're not going to get those big links
and those
anymore.
links are everything, because if nobody comes to what you wrote, why do it?
So in other words, you can put out a little blog, but nobody's reading it until somebody starts reading it and then links to it, and then more people. So it's very, very organic who gets some credibility.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily slow. Let me give you, this gets us a bit off topic, but let me give you this great example I have of something that came up that both worked and a comparable one that didn't work. Is back during the 08 election, one evening or weekend or whatever, I was bored, I was sitting at my computer, and so in 2 hours I created a website called coloradoballot.net where I listed out all the initiatives on the ballot, the pros and cons, and my conclusion on it. And it was a very fair and balanced website, and I mean that in the true Fox News, MSNBC sense of the word. Put some links out here and there. Well, over the course of the election, it had, I think it was 750,000 visitors. Election day, it had something like, it almost hit 100,000, I remember that, with 9.5 page views per person over a couple minutes. In other words, people were coming there and they were spending a lot of time going through all the initiatives.
From your point of view, and
yeah, and you have to be, straightforward and honest of this is what it stands for. But like the Egg Amendment, if you remember that, was this unequivocally will outlaw abortion and some birth control. And then I put, if you think that is good, you should vote for this. If you think that is bad, you vote against it. On the others, there was a bit more slanting it.
Give me the example of something that didn't work.
But let me give you the last thing on that. But that was for 2 hours work and $11. That had to have moved the needle a little on the voting. That's an incredible democratization of it. Now, in the election last year, I also created a fair and balanced website for Cory Gardner, where I just picked the things he had said that he had to say to the base that your voter in the middle would not be that comfortable with, and just focused on those. And on a good day, I was getting 10 visitors. I mean, it was like,
Well, what made the difference? Why did one go and one didn't?
I wish I knew.
Interesting. All right, I want to get into Huffington Post for a second, because I'm getting a sense, and tell me if I'm wrong, that the Huffington Post, which started out as a very liberal blog, doing I think a lot of the things that Paul's does, now wants to be seen as a more respected news source. And so you're seeing commentators from both sides of the fence now, and more news reporting. Am I wrong on that? And they want to do something that is national.
Sure, and that seems to be the aspiration for a lot of organizations, is to try to glom onto the residual, we're legitimate members of the press or part of this professional commentary class.
What about the Examiner? Isn't the Examiner an online paper in a lot of cities?
It is. I think they have the set up to be the Denver Politics Examiner or something like that. But it's not, hasn't taken off as much to my knowledge as the Huffington Post has.
Why has the Huffington Post done it?
Well, a lot of money from AOL and backers that have given money to Arianna Huffington to promote the website. There's a lot of money there, just as there's money involved and behind Andrew Breitbart and big government.
Yeah, there's a lot of venture capital that went into it. I post on Huffington Post also. You write once, I put it on my own. Colorado Polls, Huffington Post.
So in other words, write twice, get paid.
Zero.
Yeah, that's right. So are these sites? And I'm getting a sense that these are hyper partisan sites. Now they might have.
No. Huffington Post is all about the advertising revenue. 100% about the advertising revenue. And with AOL, it started off of, this is a fun thing for Arianna Huffington and her friends to blog on. And then it was, okay, it's getting some traction, some VC money's getting thrown at me, let's bring in, this liberal slant and make it, a fair and balanced, liberal thing. And they started building on that. But then the venture capital money in there was suddenly going, we can make this puppy profitable, and, we'd actually like to make a profit on our money. And with that, it became all about the click ads.
But click ads don't pay much, do they? You have to get a lot of click ads to make some money.
Google makes pretty good money off click ads.
They make a lot of click ads. But other than that, aren't most of these sites hyper political, and therefore people are counting on political donations or charitable donations? It's not like the Denver Post that gets its money by selling ads and selling the actual paper. You have different ones, and that come up with. MoveOn.org has their paper, and Daily Caller is I'm sure financed by someone on the right, and it goes that way, doesn't it?
I think the blogs have basically filled the gap that was left over from what David was talking about 70 years ago, when you created a professional class of journalists. Before that, all the newspapers were partisan. You had a left-leaning newspaper, you had a right-leaning newspaper, Republican, Democrat. Blogs have pretty much filled that gap, and so when you're talking to your base, whether it's left or right, you throw in the red meat that people talk about on blogs. You're preaching to the choir. But the important thing is, when you look at something like the Pew polls talking about the number of adults that are using internet for seeking out information for campaigns and for their candidates, is only increasing over time, and by a very quick rate. It's already overtaking, or has overtaken, newspapers for the, I think, under 40s, and it looks poised to take off and try to catch up to where TV is. But we're talking about, well, is TV? I think Google released a thing very recently talking about the importance of TV ads on people's impressions on how they vote. Where are these TV ads coming from? Quite often now, they're not just coming from the Denver Post. There's actually a new TV ad that came out today, and it quotes two blogs. There were the Colorado Polls.
So in other words,
Colorado Polls was quoted in the mayoral race.
So in other words, there's
this
poll
year.
quotes that say the Denver Post
Or
says,
video.
vote for this.
Most importantly, the video. I mean, the stuff that I've worked on last year at National Review made it into TV ads. There was no coordination. Anybody with a laptop and the $30 computer program can just go lift a video and turn it into an attack ad. And that's, they're moving back to where most people, especially the older folks who do vote at a lot higher rate than the under 30s, they're putting them into TV ads, and the TV ads are what the folks are watching.
I can understand why people are not happy about this change. Change is difficult, and so for people who are looking at their newspaper dwindling, and they're not used to following how to get information on the website, so they go to their trusted website. I mean, I go to the DenverPost.com.
But see, you're showing your age on that. I've got 3 daughters, and so they go to Google. And again, that's why page ranking is life. So they go to Google, they put in whatever they're looking for, including political stuff. And my one daughter, when she lived down in Jefferson County, said she's doing her primary ballot. I said, "Do you want my 2 cents worth?" She goes, "No, Daddy, I can do this myself." And I said, "Well, call me when you're done." She calls me up, and for the races I knew, she basically laid out who they were and what was going on. I go, "How'd you find them?" She goes, "Well, I just put all their names into Google and hit the first couple links that look good."
But as far as getting news, I'm talking about news.
That's how she gets news.
But you can't put in murder and try to find out who was murdered today. You'd have to ask, I wonder who's murdered.
No, you would say murdered in Denver.
Well, how would you even know that Occupy Denver happened if you Google?
Occupy Denver built through the blogs. The newspapers caught up with it after.
But you're missing my point. That if you're into the blogs, great, you get these sense. But if you're not, are you missing?
Yes.
I mean, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, talking to folks, politically active folks who are older than myself. I'm 32, and they're just flabbergasted every time I tell them something about something they haven't heard of yet that they won't hear on, and because it's from the right, they might not hear on Fox News for another week or so. They're just astounded that this story is out there. They're missing it because it's on the digital side, it's on the blogs, it's out there floating around. It's not coming through Denver Post or the local TV stations.
Out of time. People want to read your work. Where do they go?
They just blog my name. I mean, they do a Google search for my name, David Thielen.
And I'll get right there. PeoplesPressCollective.org.
PeoplesPressCollective.org.
One-stop shop for everything you could possibly want to know, right? You don't need anything else.
For everything free market, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. And most importantly, thank you. Listen to me late nights on 850 KOA. Check out my blog. Yeah, just go to independenceinstitute.org. Tell a friend. We'll see you next week.